Hello, my name is John Maynard Keynes. I'm a British economist, and I'd like to introduce you to fundamentally sound economics. So, first, let's talk about an abominable man named Adam Smith. Adam Smith believed in interest, individual interest. He believed that the corrupt capitalist could produce individually good for the community. Well, I think Smith might have been right. I think my ideas are better. So let me talk about myself for a minute. I was the first to say that we should go off the gold standard. I also wrote a book in 1919 that denounced the Allies' approach to the peace. I believe that the Germans shouldn't be punished because the Germans were the best producers in Europe. If we punish the Germans, we punish those who will buy our products and those from whom we will buy our products. Nobody listened, of course, but it was a famous book, made me a lot of money. I also developed a theory of government support called the theory of full employment. Now, the theory of full employment said that if the economy is in a downturn, then the government has a responsibility, really, to support the economy by putting money into the economy and by employing people so that it produces full employment. So, uh, my ideas became very famous actually in the 20th century. In the 1960s, most American economists looked up to me. They were Keynesians. But alas, by the 1980s and 90s, many economists had denounced my ideas and they thought rational market theory, oh, what a lot of bullocks, was a better idea. Well, my ideas are making a comeback in the aftermath of the 2008 Great Recession. So uh, don't tell me that I'm out of fashion because my ideas are still very prominent, even in the 80s and the 90s, when conservative politicians denounced me. What did they do in recessions? They put money into the economy. Indeed, George W. Bush, uh, his father, Ronald Reagan, all did these things. In reality, actually, I'm Jon Davidann. I'm your professor. Let me get out of this funny getup. And let's talk a bit more about uh, some important economic ideas. Okay, so that's John Maynard Keynes. Keynes was, in fact, I think, the most important economist of the 20th century. But in order to talk about economics and to talk about economic crisis and how people respond to economic crises and problems, what we need to do is go back to Adam Smith, that abominable person. And here's actually a picture of Adam Smith. Here's here's actually a picture of Adam Smith, and so Smith was a very important person in the late 18th century. Smith was somebody who argued that mercantilism, which I talked about in the last lecture, was actually a mistake and uh, was the wrong approach to produce economic productivity. He believed that mercantilism, with its state support and its state control, did not allow individuals to kind of to reach their full capacity in terms of economic success and economic prosperity. So he believed instead that the individual ought to pursue his self-interest, and in that way, uh, the pursuit of self-interest by the individual would just by nature, Adam Smith believed, would actually produce good for the community. This is actually the original idea of self-interest and profit, and these ideas really are still a part of the marketplace today. So Adam Smith was actually a very important guy in setting forward those ideas and also in rejecting mercantilism, which he saw as really an outmoded and unproductive economic idea that had really damaged economies and didn't push economies forward. Let me read you just a short quote from Adam Smith, which will illustrate what I'm talking about. So Adam Smith says, quote, by preferring the support of domestic to that of foreign industry, he intends, the capitalist, intends his own security, and by directing that industry in such a manner as its produce may be of the greatest value, he intends only his own gain, and he is in this, as in many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end which was no part of his intention. Nor is it always the worse for society that it was no part of it. By pursuing his own interest, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectively than when he really intends to promote it. Okay, so Adam Smith has given us a bit of a paradox here. Uh, Through the promotion of one's self-interest, one can promote the interests of the community. I think this idea is in eclipse, actually, in the world economy, but this was a very important idea in the 19th and into the 20th century in terms of capitalist economies. The production of profit and individual self-interest would actually benefit the community. Okay, so Adam Smith laid the foundations. Of course, there were some other economists, but really John Maynard Keynes is the most important economist in the 20th century, and he's the one who actually addresses the issue of the business cycle, of the downturn, the recession, and or depression in in national economies. And what he is arguing is that instead of leaving interest rates high to support the value of your currency, and instead of the government not changing really anything in terms of its policy, uh, John Maynard Keynes suggested that governments should be the engines of growth in those downtimes. That deficit spending is absolutely okay if it creates full employment. Okay, and that's one of the keys to his concept. So the full employment concept is really important. Now, the other thing about John Maynard Keynes is he believed that the gold standard was ruining European and American economies, and he believed that all of these nations needed to get off the gold standard to actually get more productive. He was really one of the first to reject the gold standard and high interest rates. So gold standard and high interest rates go right along with one another. And so he believed that you should float money and you should reduce interest rates to produce economic activity. That's more important. And if you have some inflation, that's okay. That's more important than supporting your currency and dampening economic activity, which will in fact produce deflation. Okay, so those two schools of thought, actually, the old support gold and the John Maynard Keynes reject gold and float your money, those two schools of thought are still with us today. So they take the form of outright Keynesians versus classicists, and also neo-Keynesians versus neoclassicists. And in general, the neoclassicists encourage a tight monetary policy, and the Keynesians, and they're worried about inflation, and the Keynesians and the neo-Keynesians tend to support loose monetary policy and support government intervention in the economy to support the economy and get it through the tough times. Keynes' basic concept was that during good times, an economy will grow so much if it's supported in bad times that it will actually outgrow the deficits that it produces in the bad times by spending to support the economy in those bad times. So that's kind of the basic framework of his argument. So I'm going to leave it there. Make sure you email me if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed Jon Maynard Keynes.